In this episode of Making an RPG in Minecraft, we quite literally changed the whole server. That's right, say goodbye to this old piece of garbage and say hello to the brand new map and loads of other features we added since the last episode. This is by far the most content-packed episode released so far. Watch till the end because trust me, you aren't gonna wanna miss how it turns out. But before we jump in, there's some catching up we have to do since the last episode was god knows how long ago. First, I have my own Patreon page. If you'd like to support me and my work, now you can. Most of the revenue from the Patreon page goes directly towards making the RPG, so if you'd like to help out, this is a perfect opportunity. Patrons get a bunch of special perks, like behind the scenes previews and early videos. And hey, the first couple of people to join will get a special role on the Discord server. Also, we've opened a brand new staff position, and it's all about being creative, so if you think you'd be a good fit, head on over to the description and apply. Speaking of applications though, I just personally want to thank each and every one of you who applied for one of the staff positions. We've received a lot of applications, and while we couldn't accept everyone who applied, it really shows the amount of hype for the project, so thank you guys. Anyway, I think that's about it when it comes to general news. Now let's get back to the server where stuff is already cooking. Our builders have been hard at work designing a brand new map. Let's see how it's going so far. Here we are. Now, you might be wondering why I'm standing in a hole made of diamonds, and that's because this is just a layout. As we progress through the video, we'll keep track of the progress the builders are making on the actual server. So as you can see, the general idea is that you're stuck in this big ravine. Now, this is just the general layout, but trust me, it's gonna look way better when we add the final details. Now, while they're building, I'm actually gonna go ahead and code something up really quickly that I didn't get to in the last episode. This feature will be chat tags, because we gotta spice up the chat a bit. Alright, so I'm just about finished, so here's the final product. If I run /tags in game, this menu pops up. Here, I can select any custom tags I like to have in the chat. My personal favorite is the level tag, because it also changes color as you level up. For obvious reasons, I have all of them unlocked, but most of them will be locked for the default player, until they do or find something in-game. Now, while testing the server, we ran into quite a bizarre issue with the client-side builds I showed off a couple episodes ago. So buckle up, because I'm about to go full nerd explanation mode. So when a block is updated in the world, Minecraft sends information of that block to all the players nearby. However, to display these client-side builds, we intersect this data and completely overhaul it so that the player sees these fake blocks. Now, this works perfectly fine if only one player is nearby that block, although problems arise when there are multiple players. When there are multiple players nearby, Minecraft sends the same data to each individual player. Now, some of you might already see the problem here. When we intersect the data for one player and change it, it also changes it for the rest of the players, causing all sorts of weird errors. This was easily fixable though, and all I needed to do was make a copy of the data and send that to the player instead. Alright, nerd time over. Let's go ahead and see what the builders have been building in the meantime. As you can see, the area already looks so much better. The builders have decorated the walls, made these two rivers and added a middle island, and colored the whole area. My personal favorite part is this little waterfall right here, where we totally won't be adding a secret because after all this isn't a video game. Now, even though the map looks better, this is nowhere near the end result, and there's still lots of work left to be done, but nonetheless, it's a step in the right direction. Okay, so next up on the to-do list is a feature that I actually really like, and it's a feature that's actually already on the server. Well, let me explain. If you remember, a couple of episodes ago, I introduced a feature called the ground items. These are basically custom decorations that are placed all over the map. Well, as it turns out, since making that video, Montage has added a much better and more efficient way to make these, which some of you might already know are called item displays. In the current system, we're using armor stands, which are both inefficient and kinda limited. With item displays though, we can change a bunch of different features. This is just one of the many tools we as a staff team use to make the server look good and polished, which would be more than a reason for you to apply for a staff position. We're currently open for alpha testers, content designers and builders, and besides, you can just apply and see what happens. Now, going back to grind items, some complications arise, but I won't bother you guys with the details yet. Instead, I'll show you guys how it works. So in my hotbar, I have a couple of important items. These mushrooms are custom models made by our incredible artist Applets, and the sticks are tools that will help me make these models come to life. Placing the mushrooms on the ground allows me to change their orientation, scale and more, which really helps when it comes to decorating builds. And besides, look at these little cute flower pots we made. How could you not like them? Mini mushrooms aside, we use this feature a lot later in the episode, so it's a pretty cool addition to the server and the build style. While on the topic of items though, let's move on to the item designer. The item designer is also a tool that's used by content designers to create completely custom items. But you might be wondering how this concerns you, the viewer. You're not the content designer, are you? Well, it actually does concern you, and I'll tell you why. Up until now, all items were hard-coded into the plugin. This basically means that to add, remove, or even change any item, you would have to edit the code, build the plugin, and reload the server. Now, if you ask me, that's valuable time we could spend making more items, so that's why the item designer exists. The item designer basically allows us to create and change custom items in real time with no reloading necessary. This allows us to create content faster, which in turn gets the server done much earlier. Now, just wait until you hear about the mob designer. That's right, we made one for the mobs too. This one though, it's a little bit more complex. The function is practically the same though, as it allows staff members to create mobs in real time. But before I go too deep into that, let's go ahead and check out how the new map is going. Yeah, so we added the giant mushroom in the center. There's no real reason why we did this, except that it looks cool and that we wanted to. Giant mushrooms aside, there's been some more building work done. The rivers have been shaped up a slight bit, the overall gradient of the build has been adjusted, and we added some rocks around the place. Now, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm really starting to like how the map is turning out, even though we're nowhere near close to the end. Okay, so where was I? Alright, the mob designer. The mob designer allows us to change loads of different stats about a mob, such as its level, XP drops, type, the behavior, and so on. Now, some parts of the mob designer, such as the behavior of certain mobs, does have to be hard-coded into the game. This is due to the complexity of these certain fields. Now, let's look at an example. Mob behavior allows us to change how the mob functions. We can change how they attack, how they spawn, die, and so on. This is very useful for features like custom attacks, but it's not really viable when it comes to doing it in-game, which is why it must be done in code. But that's not actually that big of a downside, as mob behavior won't need to be changed as often. Another cool feature that the mob designer provides is custom mob loot. This allows us to set a chance for a certain item to be dropped when a player kills a mob. Here, we have a mushroom zombie that when killed, has a chance to drop this mushroom armor. And look, the chat message even shows you the chance. Okay, so before we get into the juicy features like the items and mobs we made, let's first talk about some technical changes that we had to make. Don't worry, I won't be going into too much detail. So the first problem that we ran into is that I installed the wrong Minecraft server. Yeah, I have no clue why, but for some reason when I was looking for the download for the proxy, I downloaded Waterfall instead of Velocity. Now, I'm not going to go into detail why Waterfall is bad, but I had to reinstall the whole proxy, which wasn't really fun. We also had to switch our data storing system so that it doesn't rely on paper anymore. Oh, and we updated the server to 1.19.4 so we could use the item displays for gun items. That's about as much as I can say about the technical changes without scaring most of you off. Now, let's talk about some new stats we added. Attack speed is now part of the combat system. It works about as well as you would expect. More attack speed means faster attacks, less attack speed means slower attacks. The player by default has 100 attack speed, and the number can go down to 0 and up to 200. 0 halves the rate at which the player can attack, and 200 doubles it. This is a pretty simple stat, but it'll be helpful to make different sorts of weapons. Now, another stat we added that was long overdue is health regen. This one is also pretty self-explanatory, just makes you regenerate more health. While on the topic of health regeneration, let's look at this interesting mushroom mob. What does it do? Not much, you might say at first, but if you let it hit you, you'll notice something interesting. Your health isn't regenerating. How could this be? What was that mob? Well, this is the fungus crawler. When it attacks you, it gives you a status effect called stagnation, which completely negates all health regeneration. Quite a deadly one if you ask me. Now, besides stagnation, we added a bunch of other status effects, as well as the actual status effect system. You can see all status effects you have in the tab menu, as well as how long each one lasts. Some other status effects include slowness, speed, hand fatigue, and so on. Let's take a look at another mob we made, the shroom zombie. Now, you probably already know what happens when this mob hits you. You get hit, get stagnation, and can't regenerate health for 15 seconds. Well, what if I told you that's not what happens? And instead, you bleed to death. What a fun mob! So besides stagnation, there's also bleeding, which, as you expect, makes you bleed to death. Now, I know these mobs seem a little scary and overpowered, and perhaps they are, but they drop some pretty cool loot, which I actually won't show you guys as to keep some secrets. We can't just reveal everything right now, although you shouldn't worry about these mobs too much. They only spawn in caves and don't spawn on the main island at all. Speaking of which, let's check on how the builders are doing. Whoa, that's a lot of progress. Now, instead of going around and giving you guys a tour of the island, I'll leave that to you guys when the server actually releases, and instead, I'll be showing you guys a quick time-lapse of how the town grew, to say. Well, that was quite a time lapse, so this is pretty much where we're at right now. This is definitely not finished yet, and there's still more detailing and building to do, but it's a massive upgrade compared to what we had until now. I want to give a special thanks to our builders who spent a lot of time making all this possible, especially Ak and Craig for doing a bunch of the builds. Now, if you remember from earlier in the episode, I was talking about grind items, and we actually used them in the builds. If I fly around the town a bit, you can see these fancy mushrooms pop up around the place, and I think they look pretty sick. Now, due to obvious reasons, I won't be showing you guys much of what the builds will be used for. That will just be leaking all of our top secret plans. Instead, let's talk more about the content, rather, items. First, a couple of fixes. One of the main problems with the items, more specifically the stats they give, was that the game couldn't recognize what was armor and what wasn't. Due to that issue, armor was giving you stats even if you just held it in your hands. This was a pretty easy fix, and it just required us to add an item tag to all the custom items. Besides just fixing the armor bug, it also allows us to add these cool item tags in the item design. Oh, and would you look at that, the whole thing's changed. Yeah, so in order to spice up the item design, we decided to completely change it. Now, I'm like 99% sure I never actually showed you guys the previous design, but I'll take that 1% and act as if you all know what I'm talking about. Item stats are now fully colored and are displayed right under the name. This part of the item, represented by this yellow text, is a passive perk of the item. And at the bottom of the design, there's a tag that shows the rarity and the type of item. The rarity is also shown as the color of the tag and the item's name. Now when it comes to armor, there's a separate part called the armor set part. Think of it as an armor set perk you get for wearing specific combinations of items. When inactive, it's shown as this gray text, with these stars next to it symbolizing how many pieces you are wearing out of how many are needed. In this case, 3 out of 4 stars are lit up, so 3 pieces are worn and 4 are required for the perk to activate. When the set is activated, the text turns green and it can even change depending on specific conditions, like in this example, where these 3 caps change the perk. Now, besides passive perks and armor sets, there will also be item abilities and a customization menu for other kinds of accessories such as rings, necklaces, and so on. Unfortunately though, if I just keep adding these features, this video will never come out. So expect them in the next episode where we'll be adding even more content. Though, it's time to end the episode, so thank you to all my patrons whose names are on the screen right now, thank you for watching and have a great day.